Assalamu alaikum and good morning, Miss Sabrina and all my fellow students. I am Maimuna Shaifikul Islam from the course English 643. Today I'm going to present my research paper. So the title of my research paper is Code Switching Among Private University Students in Bangladesh. The primary function of language is communicating meaningfully. We use language for a variety of reasons, and the primary function of language is to communicate meaningfully. People all over the world communicate in different ways, such as nonverbal communication using gestures, facial expression, eye contact, speech, through writing, and so on. Code switching is a way of communicating using speech. So, what is code switching? Is it the code that we use in computer programming? Yes, it is, but this is linguistics, so the code has a different meaning here. In social linguistics, the language may be referred to as the code. And switching means changing, shifting. So code switching is a linguistic phenomenon in which a speaker switches or alternates between two or more languages in their speech while communicating. Now that we know what code switching is, let's move on to the focus of the study. People of every sector, such as doctors, teachers, students, parents, the general public, and so on, more or less code switch in their conversation. However, in this paper, I'm going to only focus on tertiary level students of Bangladesh. I am specifically focusing on a private university for the sake of narrowing it down because it's a small scale research. Let's move on to the literature review. My literature review is huge, but for the sake of this presentation, I have only included the most important points. So globally, code switching happens mostly in bilingual and multilingual communities. I mean, the people who speak more than, the people in the communities who speak more than two or more languages. The concept of code switching is different in each country, each sector. For example, in a study published by Joseph Bukowski, 2021, it was found that the Black Americans, their concept of code switching was that code switching is a tactic in order to succeed in interracial relations. And today, those same Black Americans see code switch as the route to be categorized as a successful white American, although they cannot change their skin color. And in another study conducted by Roseline and Hussein, they were found to code switch because they view code switching as the French authors, they found to code switch between English and French in order to emphasize the high status of their language. So they code switch because they see that if they code switch, they're highlighting the importance of their language. Similarly, in another study published in Arab World Journal, Begum and Hawk found that the Bangladeshi expatriate teachers in Saudi Arabia, they code switch in order to show how rich the Bengali literature is. So it's the same thing. They also want to highlight the importance of the language, and they also code switch because they want to facilitate the acculturation between them and their students. In another study, such as by Wei and Milroy, it's an older study, but it is still relevant. Here it was found that the Chinese do not normally code switch, but when they do, it is to contextualize offers or requests for their children. And finally, spiraling into Bangladesh, a study conducted by ULAB students found that people from all sectors of Bangladesh, educators, students, sellers, consumers, medical professionals, office-going people, they all use code switching because they do not have a good command over their mother tongue, which is Bangla. These students published their study in the repository. So now that we know that people all over the world use code switching, and in the sectors they code switch, let's move on to the concept of code switching. So according to Word-Off, codes in a single utterance when a bilingual use more than one languages, it is termed as code switching. Bilingual, bi means two, lingual means language. So bilingual is a person who uses two languages. So code switching is a linguistic term that denotes the concurrent use of more than one language or a language variety. Let's move on to the forms of code switching. So the first one is tag switching. As you can see, in tag switching, a tag question follows a sentence. For example, you're going to sleep now. বুঝেছো? But all tag switching does not have to end with a question mark. For example, sometimes set phrases in a language are added to another language at the end of a sentence. For example, you can see in example number 2, ওরা বগুড়ায় ওভাবে বেড়ে উঠছে, if you know what I mean. Then move on to intra-word code switching. The change occurs within the word. For example, goribs, gorib is Bangla. The S added is an plural marker in English. Goribs, borloks, denjupod. Denjupod is dangerous, bipod. Okay. So the change occurs within the word. Intersentential code switching. In intersentential code switching, the change takes place at the end of a sentence or clause. For example, it's in example number 1, he's here. So this form of code switching can emphasize a point made in the other language. When the person says he's here, and it already means the same thing in Bangla, that the person is the same. So it's emphasizing a point. And participants of such conversation can indicate to whom the sentences are addressed as a signal of code switching. For example, তুমি শুধু এইবার পাস করো, direct ticket to America. This sentence or utterance can only be understood by the person whom it is said to. The next is intrasentential code switching. Here, the change occurs within the clause or sentence. As you can see, দেখছো না, the new girl, the talking, তুমি কেন ওকে interrupting? And there are some rules for intrasentential code switching. This is that the change has to be grammatically correct and complementary to the whole sentence. Even though they're using English words like new girl, talking, interrupting, it has to be complementary to the whole sentence. It's a deliberate switching of code by the speaker, because people do not normally use, people say that দেখছো না নতুন মেয়েটা কথা বলছে, but here the person is দেখছো না new girl talking, so it's deliberately using it. This kind of code switching can also be known as code mixing, and the proficient speakers of both languages tend to use this code switching. Okay. Let's move on to the types of code switching. So there are 3 types of code switching: situational code switching, metaphorical code switching, and conversational code switching. Situational code switching is when there's a change in the topic or the participants. And metaphorical code switching, it signals a change in the role of relationships such as group membership and in-group or out-group distinction. And conversational code switching, there are changes in the language and subject matter, but instead of the topic or situation. It's also known as code mixing. Move on to the effects of code switching on people. Here too, at first I talked about the effects of code switching around the globe. For example, I talked about the Black employees, means the Black people in America there. They feel the pressure to code switch because they may perceive that they're being devalued. And that's the effect of code switching those Black employees. Other effects, such as we see in Bangladesh, is that due to code switching, it has improved medical communication in Bangladesh between the doctors and the patients. And the education sector increased language performance in people who have good command over the language, because sometimes people code switch because they do not have a good command over their mother tongue, as seen in the present day Bangladeshi youths. So this, and in the same study, in Sajib et al., it's been found that older bilinguals are less willing to switch language than younger bilinguals, because they assume it to be irrelevant and disrespectful to the mother tongue. So there are two different perspectives. Let's move on to the methodology. So in this study, I'm following the qualitative approach. My research questions are, number one, what forms of code switching do students use in their daily lives? Number two, why do Bangladeshi students code switch in conversation? Number three, how are they accepted by others while they code switch? So there are two ways I'm going to collect data. The first one is collecting field notes by setting is the cafe, the university cafe, the study rooms, the university library, and the university hallways. And my first research question is answered through field notes. And the other form of data collection is interview. Till now, I have collected interviews of 3 participants. Before doing my actual interview, conducting my actual interview, I have piloted my interview questions onto few people and corrected it according to the pilot results. And my research question 2 and 3 will be answered through the interviews. After collecting the data, I have read the data collected by transcribing the interviews verbatim and by doing color coding of the interviews. And there is one more thing that I found while conducting the interviews is very few people understand the word code switch. And even if I have given a brief before the interview what code switching is, I've explained it in the simplest of terms, but still people seem not to understand what code switching is. So a part of, even though it says, my title says it's on private university students, it seems that this research has to be done on people who are from a linguistics background. Even though code switching is used by everyone, but it seems that while collecting data, it has to be done specifically with participants. It is conducted specifically with participants who are from a linguistics background, because they seem to understand code switching better. So this is, I think, one of the limitations of my data collection. So the analysis is field. This is a transcription of the field notes. So these are the different settings I took my field notes in. And these numbers are the frequency of the different forms of code switching found in the settings. So in all the settings, I found that people use intrasentential and intersentential code switching more than tag and intra-word code switching. And this is a color coding of the interview research question 2. So my research question 2 was, why do Bangladeshi students code switch in conversation? Till now, I've done on 3 participants. These are my 3 participants. And this participant, it has to be, I think, 4. This participant had told that they code switch because it's comfortable. This participant says it helps to communicate well. And this participant says it's easier to stress a point because the words meaning something in Bangla mean different in English. So till now, the frequency is 3. This participant is the second participant. She said it helps to enhance English speaking skills. So till now, no one has said the same thing or a similar thing. That's why the frequency is 3. All these people, I think, said the same thing. That's why it's colored in pink. And this third person said code switch because they become a part of the code switching actually became a part of the vernacular words, and that's why people code switch. The students code switch. Until now, no one has said anything as such, so the frequency is still 1. Okay, and this might this number 13, 9, and 11. This I think it might change because I have transcribed along with the background questions of the interview. So if we exclude them, I think this might change. These are my references. These are not the only references of my study. There are more, but I have only used the references that I used in text of this presentation. So that's all it. Thank you for listening to me, and I'm looking forward to your feedback.